Showtime. Welcome to the Rosie and Bill Show. Our guest this week has had a long and successful career in the music industry. She's written a compelling book about her legendary father, Glen Campbell, and she's turned her love for travel into a career. Please welcome to the Rosie and Bill Show, Debby Campbell. Debby, we are so happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. As Dad would say, I'm happy to be anywhere.
Prior to us starting the show, you said that you're there in San Antonio and it's an overnight, because this goes to what Rosie was talking about in that career in the travel business. Right. So you're kind of working, right? I don't know where you get all your energy from.
I don't either.
What inspired you those years ago to embark on the career as a flight attendant?
Well, I was a school bus driver. And I decided I didn't like driving in the snow anymore. So I thought I'd fly above it. And they had good insurance benefits because I was, a mom with 3 kids. And so I applied at America West in Phoenix, Arizona in 1987. And that was in June. And in September of 1987, I got to sing with Dad at the State Fair in Phoenix. And after I sang with him, he said, honey, why don't you go on the road with me? So now I've got an airline job in 1987 of June, and Dad wants me to go on the road with him as of September. So for 35, well, not 35, but I've been a flight attendant for 35 years, but for 25 of those years, I was doing both jobs.
How did you wrangle that?
With America West, you've got so many weeks of vacation. And so if you had vacation like in a month, you don't have to work that whole month. You could take the whole month off. And so I always knew our big tours, like over in Europe, Australia, wherever we were going, the UK, I could bid my vacation in advance, and then I could get that whole time off. And then the rest of it, I just bid my schedule around our singing dates.
And I guess you had a pretty good boss.
I did have a great boss. Yes, I did. Yeah. Of course, I really didn't know it at the time, because, I didn't grow up with Dad. I grew up with my mom and stepdad, so I didn't live with Dad. So when I would get to visit with Dad, he was always on the road touring. So I was usually with like Billy, my first stepmom, and her kids in California. And then when him and they divorced, then he married Sarah, and then I'd be visiting, So it wasn't until I actually moved to Phoenix in 1983, when my ex-husband got out of the Air Force, I wanted to live near one of my grandparents, my kids as grandparents, and my mom and them were living in Germany. So we picked Phoenix, and that's how it all started. And what a blessed life I've had ever since, because Dad and I ended up being best friends. So it was really
We are
cool.
Definitely going to touch on that in a few minutes. Okay. But I just wanted to ask you, with having a father with that kind of star power as a musician,
right,
and a guitar player and a singer, when did you discover that you, Debby, had the yen to go into the music business?
Well, I really never thought about going into the music business. I just said, Dad, can I sing with you? I think I tinkered with a rock and roll band in the late 70s when I went to live with Dad. My mom and stepdad still had 2 years left in England, and I graduated from high school, so I went to live with Dad and Billy in LA. And so I tinkered with a rock and roll band that were out of West Covina, Sky People. It happens to be where Van Halen and them were from. And I sang with them, you know, here and there, messing around, but never really thought I'd want to be getting into the music business per se. And so, you know, the 25 years that I spent with Dad wasn't really getting into the music business. It was hanging out with my dad, and I got to sing with them, and I got to travel the world, and my kids got to be a part of that. And so that was, you know, that was the main focus of it, was being able to hang out with my dad.
I have to tell you, Debbie, listening to you say that, it resonates with me, because there's actually a couple of things that that you and I have in common in a personal way, and that is the fact that no, I should back up. Don't get me wrong. My dad didn't really sell any records and didn't really have a musical bone in his body, but my mom, she was married 4 times. And my parents got divorced when I was very young, which was the same case with you. So
Right.
when you talked about hanging out with your dad, I thought back to how I looked forward to every weekend or every other weekend when I would get to do that.
Right.
What kind of an impact did that have on you early on, you know, as a young child, for that to happen with your parents?
Well, both of my parents were married 4 times. And I am the oldest of 13 kids. Half siblings. All of them are half siblings. And so it was, I saw a lot. You know how you have to always fit into the new marriage at the time scenario. And my singing with Dad weaved my way through all of that. And yeah, so.
You got me beat 8-6. It was 2 for my dad, 4 for my mom. So
Yeah, it's quite a journey. But and then not on top of trying to fit into families to have a relationship with your parent, now you have business people, you have fans, you have anybody and everybody, and you don't know where your station is because you really haven't had that bond with your parent because of all of that. You know what I mean? And so I was able to get that bond by being on the road with Dad all those years.
That's what I was going to ask you, Debbie, because when you have a lot of siblings, and now you're telling 13, I thought it was 8. So that's even.
Yeah. Well, that's 8 on my dad's side. My
right.
mom had with her marriage,
Right.
just also. Yeah.
Right. So, you know, you're jockeying for attention from both parents. What was your, and depending on where you fall in the line of
Right.
the siblings, you know, you
Right.
might have different ways of getting time with your parents, of getting
Right.
attention. Did you have, you mentioned singing with your dad. Did you have any other things that were kind of your go-tos to say, oh, this is how I can have some quality time with my folks?
No, because I didn't know how, you know, because it's always about the marriage at the time. You know, I don't know if you know what that means. I mean, I didn't even know what it meant. You know, you're just always trying to fit in, you know, and in fact, that's so funny because my sister Kelly, who is from Dad's second marriage, my stepmom Billy, her and I had a little tiff the other day, and she just went off on me. I remember how mean you were to me when we were little. You said he was my dad before he was your dad. I go, Kelly, I was like 7 years old or 6 years old, and you got to be with Dad all the time. And when I would come in to visit during the summer when I was out of school, a stupid 6 or 7-year-old would say something like that because you're fighting over the attention of trying to be with your parent, you know? I mean, I was always on the outside looking in. And so, you know, we got through that, and she knew, you know, but I couldn't believe that it came up all the years later, you know?
Isn't that funny how?
Yeah. How you harbor things. Some people
Yes.
harbor things. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you think that you've grown up, and then
Right.
those hurts that have been laying dormant for so long as a child come back
Right.
out. And they're not necessarily rational, though they were real at the time.
Right.
Of course, you didn't really mean that. You were a little girl. But that's really, my heart, you know, is breaking for you as you're talking about that, because I mean, I was blessed to have 2 parents that just stayed together their whole lives.
Right.
I
Yeah.
didn't have that. And when I listen to stories that Bill tells, I listen to what you're saying, is it's got to be very much of an upheaval for you, and even to get your footing in life. Did you find that it affected your making friends, or even fitting in other areas of your life, in school?
Of course. And maybe when I was younger, like I tried to go to college. I mean, Dad, they put me in college in Santa Monica. And it's, you know, Dad was at the height of his career then. And so all people wanted was so I just dropped out of college because I wasn't into that kind of attention and all of that. And yeah, so I mean, but I look at Kelly and them too. After Dad divorced Billy and moved on to Sarah, another marriage, now they're on the outside looking in. So all of the kids at some point are dealing with the same aspects that I dealt with. I was just blessed enough to be able to have a common goal with Dad, to sing with him, and him wanting me to go on the road with him. And I got through because of that,
Right. That was the anchor that held you kind of grounded with.
Right. And Dad and I, through all of that, found out that we were, I'm so much like him. I find myself even today saying things that he would have said, or laughing at something that Dad would have just thought was hysterical, and it's, they say the first daughter is the most like their father, and I think I believe that.
That's interesting.
I'm going to apply to the first son, because that would be me with my dad. I'll have to look.
I don't know. I'm not a boy, so I never paid attention to that, Bill.
Well, I'm going to ask kind of a silly question, because you mentioned that at that time he was at the height of his career.
Right.
As a teeny bopper,
right.
Did you have any big crushes, and did you leverage your dad's celebrity to meet any of them?
I did have a crush, and of course you could even imagine who it was. It was Elvis. But I didn't meet Elvis until after Dad and Billy were divorced, and she's the one that actually took me to see him. Yeah. So my first stepmom was the one that actually afforded me that luxury of seeing Elvis and meeting him. And then they always say, don't meet your idol, because that's toward the end, and he wasn't the love me tender blue Hawaii Elvis, but still great admiration, great. Can't say enough about Elvis. And him and Dad were very good friends. I mean,
I was going to ask you about that.
They used to exchange sunglasses with each other. I like your sunglasses, Glenn, and they would trade sunglasses. They were very much alike. And I watched the Elvis story, and I see a lot of similarities throughout Dad's business dealings with the people in his life and the story of Elvis, but I didn't realize it at the time, Rosie, because when you're in the middle of it, you don't realize what's going on until you get away from it, step back, and then you realize, wow, a lot of similarities between him and Dad, both country boys, raised very simply, poor. And yeah, boy, do I wish Dad was back so I could tell him some things, say some things that you didn't ever say, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Yeah. But
well, I imagine we don't really know what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes. And right. He was your father, number one. Right. So you had a certain role that you played together. But now seeing that movie, I can imagine that you have an empathy for what he went through.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
There's a lot of fame, but there's also a lot of challenges.
Yeah. And, through all that, building the relationship with my dad that we ended up having, I'm still walking on eggshells, because if I saw something I didn't like, I never spoke up, because I wasn't going to upset the apple cart, because I'm still trying to forge my own way. I'm not in here to make trouble, but there was a lot of things that I didn't like, that went on around Dad, but I just kept my mouth shut because I wanted my kids to have a relationship with their grandparent, and I wanted to remain close in that steadfast in that momentum. And so that's what I did. And my kids ended up having a great relationship with their grandfather, and one that they'll cherish forever,
That's wonderful. And that was a sacrifice that maybe you had to make so that
they
could have that relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, don't come between a mom and her kids and a grandparent, then I become a lion, but with myself, I would let people, I guess what I'm trying to say is I would take well, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, the abuse, but I would not let anybody abuse my kids' relationship with their grandpa, so, yeah.
And I'll tell you, Debbie, as you're saying some of these things, and I think back, and I used to kind of wonder, like, what was it that would drive me to look forward to that time that, that I would have with my dad. And then at one point when I became a teenager, I actually moved in with him when Mom was on number 3 at the time. And my sister was with number 2, got kind of like you were saying. So I'm identifying with a lot of these things, just didn't quite have the overall number of 13
Right.
siblings. I have a brother and a sister. But it is interesting how there's that something inside you that just drives you to want to be and have that time, with your dad. And I just was the happiest guy in the world when I got to move in with him just before I turned 13.
And then, of course, Dad wanted to be with me because he would like, come out and go golfing with me today. I go, Dad, it's our only day off. I'm not going out on that stupid green chasing a ball, but I'm competitive because I was a softball player and I was a bowler. And so I thought, okay, I'll go out with you. And then I would go out with him then, and then I'd go out with him again. And then I fell in love with the game of golf because I could do it. I mean, when you're not very good at something, you don't want to continue, but then I kept doing it and getting pointers from Dad. And I ended up, I could hold my own pretty much and not play crappy, I guess you want to say. And but see, the funny thing about it, Dad didn't like playing with people that couldn't play golf. He didn't like playing with crappy people. I go, well, why do you want me out there then? Well, it's different. You're my daughter. I go, okay, so that's what our Branson days when we lived in Branson held. Every day we played golf, every night we sang, and that's what we did for weeks on end every year that we were in Branson. And all over the world. I golfed with him in Australia, in England, in Scotland. He wanted me out there golfing with him. So it turned out great. I forged my way that way too, I guess, unknowingly.
It sounds like you were a pretty good athlete.
I think I am. I mean, not a great athlete, but I'm very competitive. So I'm willing to put the work in to try,
Well, and you have a certain amount of skill.
I held a 189 average at bowling for many years.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I used to bowl on 3.
Good.
Yeah. So and come to find out, my high game was a 279, and that was Dad's high game was a 279. So I thought that was kind of nostalgic. Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet. Do you have, Debbie, a favorite memory? I mean, you talked about golf, you talked about singing with your dad. Do you have a favorite memory? And did he teach you how to sing? Did he ever give you pointers?
No, he never taught me how to sing, but he would give me pointers when I'm learning a new song, lag behind that verse, step out in front of that one. Favorite memories are definitely playing cards. We played cards everywhere in hotels. Him and Roger, his agent, Roger Adams, we would sit in hotel rooms and watch a Wheel of Fortune and bet quarters on who could guess the clue the quickest. But playing cards, Dad and I played cards everywhere. I mean, I remember sitting in Sparks, Nevada, and I wouldn't send our laundry out with the hotels because it's so dang expensive. So we'd go down to the local laundromat and we'd have our caps on and we'd sit in there while I did our laundry, just playing gin. So it was pretty fun. I brought a lot of normalcy. I think I'm proud to say I brought a lot of normalcy to Dad's life. Down to earthness. Not that he wasn't down to earth, because he was very down to earth, but the big around him can get bigger than you know what I mean?
Sure.
And so he loved hanging out with my friends because they didn't want anything from him. They just loved being around him, hanging out, talking, visiting, shooting the crap, and so I'm very proud to say that I think I brought as much into that relationship as Dad gave me.
Oh,
yeah, that's very compelling, and it's just like I said, very heartwarming to hear those moments. And like you said, whether you're playing golf, playing cards, it's sometimes I guess it doesn't even matter what the it is as much as who you're with,
right,
when you're doing the activity.
Right.
Debbie, one thing I'm curious about is we've had several second generation artists, if you will, on our show. Bobby Brooks Wilson, Bill Haley Jr., Ned Ledoux, Chris Ledoux's son. And we learned through those conversations that there can be some pros and cons to having a famous mom or dad and kind of, following in their footsteps, if you will. What is your take on that as a second generation performer? You're out there on the road, but you're also with him, but you've done things on your own.
Right.
How did that impact you, or what are your thoughts on that in terms of being that second generation artist?
I had a second generation show in Branson at the same time that I was singing with Dad. I mean, I was working like 3 or 4 jobs, I don't know why. I had 3 kids, taking care of 3 kids and everything. But Noel Haggard was in it. Grandpa Jones's grandson was in it. Peggy Lynn came over and sang at some point. Loretta's daughter. In fact, I'm still really good friends with Peggy. I never really wanted to get into the career aspect of it, which I'm still not. And even today, Bill, I'm out doing shows here and there, tribute shows to Dad. I never in a million years thought I'd be singing Wichita Lineman or By the Time I Get to Phoenix or any of those. And do people actually want to come and hear me sing those? I mean, that's the whole thing too. But there are some of Dad's songs I can do pretty damn well, and there's some that I'm not going to touch, like Rhinestone Cowboy. I mean, I'll sing it with the guys, but I'm not going to go out and sing it as the front person on that song. So that, the songs that I know that I really can't do justice to, I steer away from. But it's kind of, I never thought I'd be out doing a tribute show to my dad's music ever,
Well,
Have you ever tried MacArthur Park?
No. No.
My brother was saying that was the best version he's ever heard. He saw your dad a few times in concert, and he commented to me that he thought he was the best guitar player he'd ever seen because he just can do all kinds of music. Yeah. I'm curious to know if other great musicians have ever shared their feelings about your dad's gift on the guitar with you.
Absolutely. I mean, guitar, not even famous guitar players, but so many, like Keith Urban. I've met Keith many times over the years. In fact, we opened for him in Las Vegas in the later decline of Dad's days, towards the end of his singing. But yeah, Keith was one that definitely, and John Connolly. John Connolly is on the road with Kenny Chesney right now, and he was in my band in Branson. But he is a phenomenal guitar player, and he really was inspired by Dad, and that's what Dad wanted to be known as, a musician's musician. He never wanted to be a front man out there by himself. He always wanted to have the camaraderie of the band behind him. I remember one particular venue, it was up in Connecticut, I believe. And I don't think it was at Uncasville, maybe. I'm trying to remember the date, but the band got stranded and didn't make their flight into the city on time. And so Dad went out in front of the curtain and started doing his thing by himself as he could. And then the band finally got there. And while he's out there doing a few songs in front of the curtain, they're back there setting up. And then all of a sudden the curtain raises and then the show comes together. And it was really magical. But Dad never really just wanted to be out in the front by himself. He loved being a part of something. So even though he could have done it all by himself, Yeah,
and one of the things that really impressed me about his guitar skills were the fact that he seemed to pick every note. There's a lot of guitar players that, especially on electric guitars, they'll kind of hammer on and cheat a little bit. He was picking every single note, moving up and down. And there's a really cool video on YouTube of his guitar solos, I think from like 1960 to 2000 thereabouts. And It's just solo after solo. And I don't know how many times I've watched it because I'm watching those fingers and I'm like, no one else can do that.
Yeah, I've got great videos of Dad. I've got videos of him teaching his great-granddaughter the guitar in my living room, showing her how he bends his little finger down at the bottom, how his Uncle Boo taught him, and, really neat, special memories of that.
Start it first so it's a little there narrow. All I'm trying to get is the back and forth motion. Yeah. Start, yeah, right there, right there. Your hand's gonna reach right.
After 200 acres, it's come to this. He's got a bobblehead valve, and he's twittering. I think it's genius that he's twittering this week, because in a way, Dan invented.
Just start very slow at first. Da 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 da.
Was on the expense account. Some of the best, I would say, fiction.
So you're doing all
All
downstrokes.
sorts of majors now. The best golf writer.
Yeah, it's like something. It's like throwing the ball. You know?
200 acres. How many dinners?
Yeah, he was something. Boy, and singing those Roy Orbison songs, oh my gosh. Crying and in dreams. And, you know, Dad had perfect pitch, didn't read music. So he was definitely self-taught. Yeah, yeah.
That always amazes me, people who don't read music and are so incredible. I mean, what is it like for you, Debbie, when I remember Lisa Marie Presley one time saying, when they asked her about her father and what is it like seeing him perform, and I think, you know, she kind of took off the glasses looking through as a daughter and looked at him as the public saw him, and she was like, oh my God,
Yeah,
my father was amazing.
yes.
How do you feel? Like, do you ever have those moments where you take off your daughter hat and just see him as an audience member?
Absolutely. I mean, I would sit backstage every night watching him, you know, because you never knew what he was going to say or do. So, you know, you always had to be on target, you know. I mean, my dad was a character. He definitely was a character. And I'm just so proud that I'm his daughter, you know. I mean, I'm so blessed that I got those memories. And yeah, definitely. And my kids the same way. I mean, they just were in awe of watching him, you know, do the Highwayman. I don't know if you know the story of the Highwayman.
No.
Dad wanted to release it first, and Capitol said, you're not going to release that song. And so they didn't release it. And Dad actually went in the studio with Waylon, Willie, Johnny, and Chris and showed them their parts on the Highwayman, which parts to do, because he had already recorded that song, and Capitol didn't want to release it. So he eventually left Capitol over some of those snafus, you know. Yeah. In fact, Dad did It's a Matter of Time and wanted to release it before Randy Travis got it. Yeah. So some of those record companies, I'm telling you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you hear like a story like that, and you just think about what the different trajectory could have been, or what should have, could have, like, what, that's really powerful. The Highwayman, I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. You'll have to listen to Dad's version. It's really, really good. Really good.
Well, let me ask you this, Debbie, because I know that you have a few passions besides travel and besides singing with your father. And one of them is your own family.
Yes.
Now a great grandmother. And also you do a lot of work for the Alzheimer's Foundation. Can you talk to us about both of those things?
Yes, I've done quite a few shows for Alzheimer's. I used to walk in Phoenix every November, because that's normally when they have their walk. And I did we raised money in Manchester, England. And then when the company in Ireland found out, then we went over and did raised money for Alzheimer's in Ireland. I mean, it's everywhere. It's, you know, you just have to do it in the States. I mean, it's everywhere. And I'll go anywhere for Alzheimer's. You know, just call me and I'm there, you know. You got me a band, I'm for free, you know. Just gotta, I'm not a track girl. You know, a lot of people want me to come and sing to tracks, and I'm just really not a track girl, because I have stage fright. You know. And I mean, I don't have stage fright going on stage. It just sometimes, I don't know. I mean, it's like, do they really want to hear me sing Dad songs? You know what I mean, in my head, you know.
There's a different energy from a band too.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you grew up with the best of the best. Why would you want to play to a track?
And then I go in with even with the band, I go and they go, okay, what do you want in your monitor? I go, I don't know what I want in my monitor. I got whatever Dad put in his. I didn't get a choice. Whatever Dad wanted, that's what I got. So if you can tell me what my dad had, then that's what I want. Yeah. So I don't know anything about all that. You know, I said, just make me sound sexy and sultry. And my kids, yes, my kids are my love. My grandkids are my love. I'm fixing to have number 8 in March. Yeah. So I will have 7 grandkids in March and 1 great-granddaughter. Yeah. And they are my loves. And thank God I fly for free, because I'm the flying around babysitter, let me tell you, because one lives in New York, one lives in LA, so I'm always flying here and there.
I want whatever vitamins you're taking. The energy level that you have and the passion you have. I'm a pretty energetic guy, but man, that's really impressive. That's amazing.
Thank you, Bill. And I'm going to be 67 in a couple days.
No.
Oh, happy almost
66.
birthday.
I'm sorry. I don't want to make myself old. I'm going to be 66, and I get to collect Social Security next year. Show me the money.
Somehow, I don't think you're going to slow down. I don't know why.
I'm not ready yet. Maybe,
Age is
I'm
just
looking
a
at
number.
maybe 70. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, as long as I'm healthy and I feel like I'm not good sitting around. I'm not very good at that. So, yeah.
Well, there was for what it's worth, I recently read an article where I think it was Clint Eastwood and Toby Keith were having a conversation, and Toby kind of asked him how he's able to do all the things that he does, at the age that he's at.
Right.
And I believe Clint's response was, "Don't let the old man in."
Right.
To which Toby wrote a song. But I think that's the key. The numbers don't matter.
No.
66, 86,
No.
especially if you're doing something that you love to do and you're passionate, who cares?
Right. Look at the Queen, 96. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You gotta live life. You gotta live life while you can, because you don't know we don't know how long we're gonna be here.
Absolutely.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, Debbie, this has been so amazing and so much fun to hear about, not only about your father, but about your life and your dreams and things that you've accomplished in your life. And we thank you so much for sitting down with us and chatting. And you'll have to come back another time when you have something else you want to talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm thinking about transferring to Philly, because I can fly international out of Philly. So if I come into Philly, I'll have to check out and see where y'all are at, and we'll get together and have dinner or something.
Oh my gosh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'd love it.
All right.
Okay.
Well, very good. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. The wonderful Debby Campbell with us this week. And if you enjoyed the show, please go to our Facebook page and hit the thumbs up button. That's to like our page, and subscribe to us on YouTube. And we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Hi, Dad.
This is in the new album too. I bless the day I found you. I want to stay around you, and so I beg you, let it be me. Don't take this heaven from one. If you must cling to someone, now and forever, let it be me. Each time we meet, love, I find complete love. Without your sweet, sweet love, what would life be?